Most people believe that being kind, agreeable, and easy to get along with is a strength. They spend their lives softening their words, shrinking their boundaries, and apologizing for opinions no one asked them to have. They call it kindness. Sun Tzu called it surrender. There is a war happening right now in every office, every relationship, every social circle you belong to. It is not fought with weapons, it is fought with perception, with leverage, with psychological positioning. And the people who always need to be nice, who need to be liked, who need to avoid conflict at all costs, are already losing that war before the first move is made. Sun Tzu understood something that most people spend their entire lives refusing to accept. The need for approval is not a virtue, it is a vulnerability. And vulnerabilities in any form of warfare, military, psychological, or social, are the exact points where an enemy strikes first. In this video, you will discover the 5 principles Sun Tzu left behind for those brave enough to abandon the need to be liked and step into the world of the true strategist. These are not motivational ideas, they are weapons. And like all weapons, they require discipline, patience, and the willingness to see reality as it is, not as you wish it were. If you stay until the end, something in the way you carry yourself will permanently change. Sun Tzu observed that before any battle begins, the general who wins has already won in his mind. Not through confidence, through clarity. He sees the terrain, the enemy, the conditions, and himself without illusion. And the greatest illusion most people carry into every conflict they face is this, that being nice protects them. It does not. It exposes them. Think about someone you know at work. They never push back on unfair requests. They agree with everyone in meetings. They stay late to avoid being seen as difficult. They apologize before stating their own opinion. Now ask yourself, does everyone around them respect them deeply? Or do people load more and more onto their plate precisely because they know no resistance will come? The answer reveals the first strategic truth Sun Tzu understood centuries before modern psychology could name it. Niceness without boundaries is not generosity. It is a signal that says, I can be taken advantage of, and I will not fight back. The strategist does not confuse warmth with weakness. He can be generous without being predictable. He can be helpful without being available to everyone at all times. He does not need the room to like him after he speaks. He needs the room to hear him. There is a profound difference between the two. One chases approval, the other commands attention. And Sun Tzu was very clear. The general who chases approval from his soldiers loses the battle. The general who commands respect wins the war. But here is where most people make a critical mistake. They hear this and they think, so I need to be cold, aggressive, ruthless. That is not what Sun Tzu taught. He taught something far more difficult and far more powerful. He taught the art of calculated warmth, being pleasant in the moments it costs you nothing, being immovable in the moments that define your position, knowing which battles to smile through and which ones require the expression of a stone wall. That precision, that emotional intelligence, that is the first principle. Kill the need to be nice. Keep the ability to choose when kindness serves you. Now understand this. Sun Tzu warned his generals about something even more dangerous than the enemy in front of them. He warned them about the enemy within, the voice that says, if I hold this boundary, they will not like me. The instinct that says, if I disagree, there will be conflict. The fear that says, if I am not accommodating, I will lose what I have. That internal voice is the second battlefield, and most people never even realize they are fighting it. There is a psychological mechanism that researchers now call the fawn response. It is the deeply ingrained habit of making yourself smaller, sweeter, more agreeable to defuse potential conflict or rejection. People who grew up in environments where approval was conditional often carry this mechanism into adulthood, into their careers, into their relationships, and it served them once. It kept them safe in situations where pushback would have been dangerous. But the problem is this: what protects a child in a difficult environment destroys an adult in a competitive world. Sun Tzu wrote extensively about adaptation. He understood that the strategies that win one kind of terrain are fatal on another. The warrior who learned to survive through silence and agreeableness in a chaotic household must unlearn that strategy in a boardroom or a negotiation. Because in those environments, the fawn response does not protect you. It marks you. It marks you as someone whose boundaries are negotiable. And once your boundaries are negotiable, so is your value. The second principle Sun Tzu handed to the master strategist is this: learn to create discomfort without losing your composure. This is the art of the controlled no, not the aggressive no that burns bridges, not the apologetic no that comes wrapped in 20 explanations and 3 apologies. The clean, composed, final no that communicates something words alone cannot. That this boundary exists, that it will not move, and that no amount of social pressure will shift it. Most people have never given a no like that in their lives, and the people around them know it. Imagine a negotiation, 2 people across a table. One of them feels an almost physical discomfort when silence fills the room. He rushes to fill it. He offers concessions before they are requested. He smiles too quickly when the other side pushes back. Sun Tzu would say this man has already lost, not because he lacks intelligence or preparation, but because his discomfort with tension is visible. And visible weakness in any negotiation, social or financial, is an invitation. The strategist on the other side of that table learned something different. He learned that silence is a weapon. That stillness communicates security. That the person who can sit with discomfort, who does not rush to resolve tension, who does not need the other person to be comfortable before he feels comfortable, holds structural power in any exchange. Sun Tzu called this controlling the terrain. In human interaction, the terrain is the emotional atmosphere of the room, and the one who controls the atmosphere controls the outcome. But Sun Tzu warned about something even more dangerous than discomfort. He warned about the strategist who performs coldness without understanding it. There is a version of this principle that people misapply constantly. They confuse emotional unavailability with strategic control. They confuse rudeness with power. They think that shutting people out, never. Showing warmth, never demonstrating human connection is the mark of a strategist. It is not. It is the mark of someone who read half a lesson and stopped. True strategic composure is not the absence of emotion. It is the mastery of when emotion serves the position and when it undermines it. Sun Tzu himself knew when to inspire fear and when to inspire loyalty. He knew when to show resolve and when to show mercy. The master strategist does not delete his humanity. He chooses when to show it and to whom. That distinction is everything. People who are strategically cold in every interaction do not accumulate power. They accumulate distance, and isolated generals lose wars. There is a particular trap that claims more intelligent people than any other. It is the trap of over-explanation. Watch someone who needs approval carefully. When they make a decision others disagree with, what do? They explain, they justify, they provide context, reasons, history, logic. They build a case for their own choices as if they were on trial. And in a sense they are. They have put themselves on trial. They have invited the other person to sit as judge, and no strategist in history handed the power of judgment to someone who had not earned it. Sun Tzu understood that explanation, in many contexts, is a form of submission. It says, "I need your approval of this decision before I can feel confident in it myself." It says, "Your perception of my reasoning matters more to me than the reasoning itself." And the moment you communicate that, you hand over leverage, not through weakness of character, through the subtle but devastating habit of seeking external validation for internally held positions. The third principle is silence as strategy. Not the silence of someone who has nothing to say. The silence of someone who has decided that some things do not require justification. When Sun Tzu positioned his forces, he did not send messengers to explain his tactical reasoning to the enemy. He moved. He acted. He let the results communicate what words would have only complicated. In the social and professional battlefield of modern life, this principle translates directly. You do not owe everyone an explanation for where you are going or why. Think about how much energy is spent in the average person's day defending positions that were never genuinely threatened. Someone at work raises an eyebrow at a decision. Immediately, a paragraph of justification forms. A friend asks why you are not attending a social event. 3 minutes of elaborate excuse construction begins. A family member questions a life choice. An entire emotional defense is mounted. And at the end of all that explaining, what has been gained? Nothing but the quiet confirmation that this person's judgment still requires external approval to feel valid. Sun Tzu would recognize this pattern immediately. He called the enemy who forces you to spend resources defending positions you never needed to defend the most efficient adversary. He did not mean a military enemy. He meant the internal compulsion to justify yourself to people who have not earned the right to your reasoning. Every time you over-explain, you are spending strategic energy on a battle that never needed to be fought. And energy spent on unnecessary battles is energy unavailable for the ones that matter. The master strategist learns to answer questions that deserve answers and to let silence answer questions that do not. He develops what can only be described as a high threshold for justification. Before explaining, he asks one internal question. Does this person's opinion of my decision have any actual consequence on my position? If the answer is no, he says very little. Not out of arrogance, out of conservation of clarity, of energy, of the quiet internal authority that evaporates the moment you start defending yourself to people who were never truly in a position to challenge you. And this is where most people make a fatal mistake. They believe that not explaining themselves will make them appear arrogant, secretive, or difficult. The opposite is true. People who explain themselves constantly signal anxiety. They signal that their sense of self is contingent on social agreement. People who speak only when it serves a purpose signal something entirely different. They signal that their internal compass does not require calibration from outside voices. And that signal, whether people consciously recognize it or not, generates a specific kind of respect that cannot be manufactured by any amount of eloquence. Now we arrive at the fourth principle, and it is the most psychologically confronting of all. Sun Tzu observed that the greatest threat to any commander was not the army across the field. It was the internal need for recognition, the need to be seen as capable, the need to be acknowledged as intelligent, the need to have one's efforts appreciated and one's sacrifice noticed. These needs left unexamined become the exact leverage points that adversaries, conscious or unconscious ones, use to control behavior. Consider a person who works in a competitive environment. They are talented, driven, and genuinely capable, but they have an invisible requirement. They need their work to be recognized, and that need, while completely understandable, is a structural vulnerability, because anyone who understands that need can control them with minimal effort. A manager who withholds praise can direct the behavior of this person far more efficiently than any formal authority. A peer who offers strategic admiration can gain access to resources, time, and effort that were never formally offered. The need for validation is not a character flaw. It is a leash, and most people do not even know they are wearing one. Sun Tzu wrote that the wise general knows what he desires, but never allows the enemy to know it. Because the moment your desire is visible, it becomes a tool in someone else's hands. Desire for recognition, desire for approval, desire to be liked, these are desires like any other. And desires that are visible are desires that can be exploited. The strategist does not eliminate desire. He conceals it. He operates from internal certainty rather than external validation. He knows his value before anyone confirms it. He knows the quality of his work before anyone praises it. And because he does not need the confirmation cannot control him. This is one of the most liberating and most difficult transformations a person can make. It requires developing what psychologists call intrinsic motivation and what Sun Tzu simply called inner discipline. It requires building a relationship with your own judgment that is strong enough to sustain action without applause. It requires learning to read your own results clearly enough that you do not need someone else to interpret them for you. This is not arrogance. Arrogance is the overestimation of one's capability. This is something quieter and more powerful, the accurate assessment of one's capability held internally, requiring no external agreement. When you reach this point, something in the way others relate to you shifts permanently. People sense at a level below language when someone does not need their approval, and paradoxically, that is when they want to give it. Attraction, in all its forms, flows toward people who do not need it. Influence accumulates in the hands of those who do not chase it. This is not a trick or a performance. It is the natural social consequence of genuine internal sovereignty. Sun Tzu understood it, and now, so do you. We arrive now at the fifth and final principle, the one Sun Tzu saved for last, not because it is easiest, but because it requires everything the previous four have built. The principle is this: strategic coldness is not the absence of care. It is the discipline of directing care precisely. There is a version of a person who has absorbed the first four principles and drawn the wrong conclusion. They have stopped needing approval. They have mastered silence. They have eliminated over-explanation. They have killed the need for validation. But somewhere in that process they became genuinely cold, unreachable, disconnected. They moved through the world protected, but also alone. And Sun Tzu would say this general lost the war by winning too many individual battles, because armies do not follow cold generals into fire. People do not give their genuine loyalty, effort, and creativity to leaders who have mastered indifference. The master strategist is not cold. He is precise. He cares deeply, strategically, and selectively. He gives his real attention to the people and situations that have earned it. He brings genuine warmth to the relationships that hold genuine value. He invests emotional energy where it generates return, not in the transactional sense, but in the human sense, in the sense that the relationship makes both people stronger, clearer, and more capable. He reserves his resources not because he has no resources to give, but because he understands that undirected generosity is not virtue. It is waste. Sun Tzu wrote that the skilled warrior does not fight every battle that presents itself. He chooses the battles where his energy creates a decisive advantage and declines the ones that only drain him. This principle applies with equal force to emotional energy. You do not have to fight every social battle. You do not have to respond to every provocation. You do not have to be available to every person who requests your time, attention, or validation. The strategist chooses. And the choice is not made from fear or coldness. It is made from clarity. Clarity about who you are. Clarity about what you are building. Clarity about which people and interactions move you toward your objectives, and which ones redirect your energy into someone else's agenda. That clarity is what the entire architecture of this video has been building toward. Kill the need to be nice to everyone equally, not to become cruel, to become sovereign, to become the kind of person who gives warmth where it matters and silence where it is earned, who explains when explanation serves a purpose and goes quiet when it does not, who does not need a single person's approval to act with full conviction. This is what Sun Tzu saw in the greatest generals he studied. Not their aggression, not their cunning, though they had both. He saw their stillness, their refusal to be moved by the noise of others' expectations, their ability to make decisions from a place so internally grounded that no social pressure could destabilize it. They were not cold men. They were complete men, men who had finished needing the world to confirm who they were before they acted like it. And here is the final thing. The transformation described in this video is not comfortable. The first time you give a clean no, without apologizing, something will feel wrong. The first time you let silence answer a question that used to trigger a paragraph of explanation, discomfort will rise. The first time you act from your own assessment of your value rather than waiting for someone else to confirm it, a part of you will wonder if you have made a mistake. That discomfort is not a signal to stop. It is the feeling of the old structure giving way to something more solid underneath. Sun Tzu understood that the most important terrain any warrior ever conquers is the territory of his own psychology. The battlefields of the external world are merely reflections of the battles already decided within. When you kill the need to be liked, when you master the art of strategic silence, when you stop justifying yourself to people who have not earned your reasoning, when you stop wearing your desires where others can use them, something fundamental shifts. You become harder to read, harder to move, harder to diminish. And paradoxically, you become far more powerful in the eyes of the people whose opinion actually matters. Not because you performed power, because you stopped performing anything at all. Most people react, strategists observe, most people explain, strategists position. Most people seek approval, strategists build certainty. The world does not reward the person who worked hardest to be liked. It rewards the person who became so clear about who they are that they stopped needing to be. That is the lesson Sun Tzu spent his lifetime encoding in the principles of warfare. And it is yours now, not to use against people, to use for yourself. Drop in the comments, "I move with precision." And before you go, if this video changed the way you see yourself, like it, share it with someone who is still shrinking themselves to make others comfortable, and subscribe because the next lesson goes even deeper. The war is not out there. It never was. It is in here. And now you have the weapons to win it.